Let's take the statement, if you work hard, you will pass. Now we can translate that to if P then Q form very easily. P is you work hard, and Q is you pass, or you will pass. So this is simply translated by letting P equal you work hard, Q equal you pass. And really I mean to say here, this is just translated in symbols as if P then Q. Now let's take the statement, if you don't work hard, you won't pass. A lot of people, if they hear the statement, if you work hard, you'll pass, also think that they hear, if you don't work hard, you won't pass. Now if we translate this to symbols, using P and Q as before, this says, if not P, then not Q. If you don't work hard, then you won't pass. Another statement that's often taken to be equivalent to the first one, it's not, but if you pass, then you worked hard. Okay, now remember, passing was symbolized by Q and working hard by P. If we use the same notation, this says, if you passed, then you must have worked hard. Okay? We don't worry about tenses, future and past, and so forth. Okay, now this statement says if you didn't pass, then you didn't work hard, which says if not Q, then not P. So you see what we've done is we've taken the statement if P then Q, we've negated the P and the Q, kept them in the same order but negated them to say if not P then not Q. Then we've switched them, if Q then P, and then we switch and negate, if not Q then not P. Now when we switch, when we keep the order and negate, this is called the inverse. We keep the order, but we negate everything. If we switch, then we get what's called the converse. Okay, we switch the order of the original statement. In the last case, if we switch the order and negate, this is called the contrapositive. Switch order and negate. Now let's look at the truth tables of these various statements. First of all, we can write down P and Q, and since we're going to be using not P and not Q, let's write columns for not P and not Q. Then we can write if P then Q, if not P then not Q, the inverse, if Q then P, the converse, and if not Q, then not P, the contrapositive. Okay, let's fill in the columns. Now, if we have P and Q here, not P and not Q are going to just reverse the truth values for P and Q as usual, so we're just going to write those down quickly. We should understand all this, up to here by this point, so I'm not going to belabor it. And now let's go ahead and evaluate the statements. First of all, if P then Q. Remember that for a conditional we look for the case where the antecedent is true and the consequent is false. And that occurs in the second line. So we get true, false, true, true. Looking at if not P then not Q. Okay, we're going to look at the not P and the not Q columns and look for where the not P is true and the Q is false. Let's see. Not P is true here and Q is false here. so that this line is going to make this one false. And in other cases, all other cases, it'll be true. Then we have the statement if Q then P, where we look for Q being true and P being false. Now we can see that over here. Q is true and P is false in the third line. So that makes the statement false. Otherwise, the statement is true. And finally, if not Q, then not P. We look for where not Q is true and P is false. And we see that that occurs on the second line, so that we have the false on this line and the other statements are true, or the other lines make the statement true. And it looks like I didn't really have that in the camera. I apologize for that, but again, the case the statement is if not Q, then not P, and that's going to occur where not Q is true and P is false. And otherwise, the statement will be true. Now, if we look at these four statements, we see that the second and third statements have exactly the same truth value, which means the inverse and the converse are equivalent statements. However, neither of these is equivalent to the original statement itself, because these are false in a case where the original statement is true, and true in a case where the original statement is false. However, the original statement and the contrapositive have exactly the same truth values. We see that these columns are identical, so that a statement is equivalent to its contrapositive, but not necessarily to its inverse or converse. However, the inverse and the converse are equivalent to one another.